If there's one car that defined the exotic car in the public imagination, including posters, magazine covers, and reputation, it's the Lamborghini Countach LP400 S. This iconic masterpiece of art, design, and engineering is the passionate culmination of desire to top the incredible Miura, which resulted in the LP400 Countach. The initial Countach, first released to the public in 1974, was a shock to auto enthusiasts everywhere with its never-before-seen styling. As the years went by, the Countach evolved with crisp fender flares and a large rear wing to create the truly iconic, wild, and exotic car that stamped its presence on the global automotive enthusiast's imagination. There were 4 very distinct variations of the Countach, starting with the LP400 Periscopio, which was definitely the cleanest design of the Countach. It had no flares or wings. And then came the LP400 S. And the biggest difference is the exterior design, where they added the flares, they added the wing. It was an option that most people did add to their car because it did help with stability at high speeds. And what also helped with stability was the addition of massive rear tires. They were the widest tires available on any production car at the time. There are 237 of the LP400S made, and of them they made 3 distinct different series. So this car happens to be one of the 3rd series car, and of the 3rd series they only made 82, and the main difference, there was very subtle differences. The main difference in this one is they decided they needed a little additional headroom, so they added just over an inch of extra headroom, which is not a whole bunch, but it can make a difference, especially if you're tall enough where your head's just grazing it. Then in this car, you're a little more comfortable than you would be in one of the earlier series. Of the 82 series 3 LP400S, this one is quite special because of the rear end. So 3 cars were made from the factory with this continuous reflector across the rear end. Most cars had just the 2 taillights on each side, but this has the large reflector, making it extremely rare. There's only 3 of them out there. And luckily, because there's so few, this rear piece is very hard to find, but this car comes with spares just in case. The owner basically collected them as just in case you ever need them. So if it does crack or anything like that, it already has the spares. Now, as far as the Countach goes, I say there's 4 separate models, but there really, if you want to count, there could be 6, because there was the LP500 prototype, but there was only 1 made, so I don't really count that. And then it goes the LP400 Periscopio, LP400S, like this one, and then you can divide the LP500 into the S group or the QV, the Quattro valve. And then after that is the 25th anniversary edition. So technically, if you break it down, there's 6 different evolutions of the Lamborghini Countach. This car rolled out of the factory in early 1982 and was sold new to the UAE, probably Dubai. Then on its way to the US, it was actually seized by the DEA for a while, where eventually it was bought by the second owner in 1993. He had it for a few years, and then it was bought by the 3rd and current owner in 1997. So the current owner has enjoyed this car for the last 23 years. And he has done a lot to it. I mean, it has 65,000 kilometers on it currently, so he's enjoyed this car quite a bit. And one of the things he did years ago was an engine rebuild, in which he did custom forged crankshaft and pistons and improvements to give it that much more power. So the Countach has some very interesting design ideas. One of them being, you open the door, you press the button, but they've also put the key hole right here. So if you want to lock your car, you come back and you need to literally like get down or it's not very functional. Possible, doable, functional, no. Also the windows. This is as far as they roll down. So you get about this much outside air coming through. And whenever I've needed, so when I was driving this car around and people would try and talk to me and I would be stopped, I would just open my door because there's absolutely no point in trying to scream through here. It's a hassle, so it's just easier to pop the door open and try and talk to people that way. Another very unique and important feature to know on this car is that it has 2 gas tanks, and the fuel fillers are hidden right in this air duct right here. So in order to fuel your car, you need a long nozzle that reaches back in here. But it's also important to know that you need to put gas in both gas tanks, because if you fill one up and the other one runs empty, you'll still run out of gas and get left on the side of the road. So you have to put gas in both tanks. Everything about this car is very angular, and it's very 80s, and I love it. It's just an iconic design, but the outside of the car is very wedgy, and no real curves, just abrupt lines, but the interior is as well. I mean, the gauge cluster is very rectangular, the dash is very flat, and it just gives it that iconic 80s feel. I mean, this is one of those cars so many people had a poster of it on their wall as a kid, and actually driving it around, that's what a lot of people would stop and say to me. And it does have some funny features. So for instance, the horn button is right on the side. It's not in the middle of the steering wheel. And it has, the little toggles for the pop-up headlights, but overall it's a fairly simplistic dash. And one of the nice things about this car too, I've driven a few different Countach, and because Lamborghini was a tractor company, sometimes the transmission can be quite stiff. But the nice thing about this car is it shifts very easily. Now it does have a very heavy clutch. On the list of cars I've driven, it's definitely up there as one of the heavier clutches I've ever driven. But it's manageable, and I would rather have a heavy clutch but a good shift any day of the week. This car does not have the best visibility when you're trying to reverse, and by that I mean just about no visibility. So looking in the rearview mirror, the wing is in the way, and you have like a little rectangle you can see out of, so you can kind of see what's directly behind you, but not much else. When you look over your shoulder, you can't see anything. Like, there's no visibility over your shoulder. And the little side mirrors don't do that much. So in order to do anything going backwards, or even like when you're pulled over on the curb and you're trying to get out into traffic, I actually leave the door open and look out like this to get out, and then go and close the door as I get started. And then reversing is definitely my favorite and most interesting part. It's probably the hardest car to reverse. So in order to back up this car, you have to hang out the side and feather the gas and the clutch in order to reverse and be able to see where you're going. Let me show you. And that's how you back up a Countach. You're definitely not buying a Lamborghini Countach because it's the most comfortable car in the world to drive, but there's nothing quite like being in such a wedgy, wild, exotic shaped car. It really turns heads everywhere you go. And it's just a blast. I mean, it's a fun car with good power, and it does drive quite well, especially if you're not trying to go in reverse. But it's just overall, it's not the most comfortable car in the world, but that's not the point of the car. You drive it because it's something you've wanted since you were a kid, and you kind of have to be ready to drive it. It's not something you just, take out for the day just because it does take a little work. I mean, it doesn't have power steering, so it's a heavy car to drive. But overall, it's just one of those things when you're driving down the road, you have a smile on your face. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this video and learned a little bit something new about the Lamborghini. If you did, please like and subscribe to my channel, and I will see you guys in the next video.